Thank you. Do you have the resources, the people and money you need to protect the nation? Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Senator. We do, from my vantage point in the National Security Division, we have resources to carry out our priority missions. Obviously, January 6th is a singular event that is stretching the resources of our office and the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C., which is handling that case. There are a number of people have been detailed around the country to support that process.
Do you need more money, any changes in the law to do your job?
At this stage, I don't have any requests for more money or more authority, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you. The Vice President equated January 6th with Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Do you agree with that?
In my view, and if I may just begin by saying, with Senator Durbin and Ranking Member Grassley, it was a day that must have been horrific to be directly involved in or be victimized on Capitol Hill, and I do think it was a singular event. I'm reluctant to compare it to any prior events in our history because, from my vantage point, it was unique and singular.
Yeah. So the courthouse in Portland was attacked 100 nights in a row. Would you consider those people a candidate for domestic terrorism charges?
I know that hundreds of people have been arrested, as we've discussed this morning. I don't have any information about whether or not, in any particular case, they would be, subject to.
Well, Senator Hirano said that people use violence for whatever purpose to attack a courthouse for 100 nights in a row. How many people have been charged with the Portland incident? Do you know?
I defer to Ms. Sanborn that had data on the number.
Ms. Sanborn?
I don't have the number.
Do you know, Ms. Sanborn?
No, sir, I don't have Portland specifically in front of me. I would, what I was referring to is 250 arrests over this whole summer.
Well, here's my point. January 6th was a bad day. It was a terrible day, and people are being prosecuted. And I would encourage you to have the full force and weight of law against those who defiled the Capitol. But these protests went on for a year. As you can see this photo behind me, they were literally throwing Molotov cocktails trying to kill police officers. And I didn't hear a whole lot from my colleagues on the other side for an entire year. I guess that's what gets me more than anything else. I understand the scope of January 6th, and I hope people are brought to justice. But this is, it's got to be a two-way street. Let's talk about the world in which we live in now that we have a very brief time to do so. The fall of Afghanistan, the takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban, has that created additional national security threats to our homeland, Mr. Olson?
I think from my vantage point, international terrorism remains a priority, and if I may broaden my answer a bit, just to say that we continue to be very concerned about.
Well, here's my question.
In Afghanistan, ISIS force.
Here's my question. The country is now in the hands of the Taliban. Are al-Qaeda elements present in Afghanistan?
We do see. I would say that we continue to see. We do continue to have concerns about both ISIS and al-Qaeda.
What capability do we have available to us to detect terrorism activity on the ground in Afghanistan after the collapse?
Senator, I think it might be not appropriate for me to go into particular.
Well, is it fair to say we've lost a lot of capability?
I would be reluctant to characterize the level of our capability. What I would say is that it remains a priority.
You can't tell this committee that a lot of the assets we had available to us have been lost because of the Taliban takeover. You can't say that.
Again, I'm reluctant to characterize the level of our intelligence capabilities in Afghanistan.
Have you been to the U.S. border, southern border?
Not, well, 2-3 years ago, I did go to the southern border. Yes.
I would urge you to go back. A lot has changed in the last 2 or 3 years. How many people have come across the border, our southern border, from special interest countries in the last year?
I don't have particular information. Possibly Ms. Sanborn does, but I don't have that.
How many people have come across our southern border in the last year from special interest countries?
Sir, I don't have that data.
Have you been to the border?
not in a very long time, sir.
Well, I appreciate both of your service, but it's been 3,000 to 4,000. We've had dozens of people on the terrorist watch list coming across the southern border. Here's some advice. If you need more resources, you'll get it from me. But if I were you, I'd go to the border and check out what's going on, because it's just a matter of time, in my humble opinion, that the broken southern border is going to be an entryway to international terrorists who are going to come here and kill a lot of Americans if we don't change policy. And I would urge you quickly to go to the border, get a handle on what's happening at the border, understand the relationship between the takeover of the Taliban in Afghanistan and the opportunity for more terrorist attacks coming our way through the border. So I would urge you to do that, and I'm surprised you haven't. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Coons. Senator Lee.
Mr. Olson, I'd like to clarify, has anyone been charged with the crime of insurrection following January 6th?
I am not aware that anyone has been charged with that particular offense, even if it is an offense. I just am not aware of that. And again, it would be inappropriate for me to speak about any particular investigation at this point, but I'm not aware of anyone being charged with that offense.
Yeah, I'm not either. I've just heard that word used several times today, and to my knowledge, nobody's been charged with that. They've been charged with other things, not that one. On June 7th of 2021, I signed on to a letter with a bunch of my colleagues. The letter was led by Senator Johnson. And the purpose of the letter was to ask a number of questions regarding the prosecution of individuals alleged to have committed crimes in connection with the 2020 riots, and those alleged to have committed crimes on January 6th. Despite the best efforts of my staff to work with the Department of Justice to narrow the scope and prioritize certain questions, we didn't receive any answer until October 22nd, over 4.5 months after we sent the letter. Now, ordinarily, you'd think that when you've got more than 4.5 months to respond, that you'd submit a response that was at least good or thorough. But to my great astonishment and dismay, the letter failed to answer a single question that we asked, not one. I mean, it was a statement of platitudes and cited publicly available resources about general policies. There was not one answer to a single one of our questions. It's a little bit troubling when you've got members of the United States Senate charged with an oversight responsibility over the Department of Justice, to have a 4.5-month delay followed by a complete refusal to engage. So I'd like to ask some questions based on that letter, and happy that I get the chance to do so here under oath, where I don't have to wait 4.5 months only to be given a non-responsive answer. So first, I'd like to know, did federal law enforcement utilize geolocation data from cell phones to track protesters associated with the unrest in the spring and summer of 2020?
Senator, if that question is directed to me, I don't have any information about that question that could be responsive.
I'd be happy to receive the answer from either one of you. Ma'am, do you have any?
Sir, without going into specifics on a specific case, I would just say that we do often use geolocation data in the course of our investigations as a result of legal process that we would serve.
I understand that you do. I'm asking whether you did so in connection with the riots that occurred in the spring and summer of 2020. And if so, how many times and for which locations and riots? And what about January 6th? I'd like to know the number of times and locations.
Yes, sir, I don't have that in front of me, but happy to take that back. I wasn't aware of your questions until today, so I'm happy to take your question and try to see what we can do to be responsive.
Okay. Now, how many individuals who may have committed crimes associated with the riots in the spring and summer of 2020 were either arrested by law enforcement through pre-dawn raids and with SWAT teams, or had search warrants served on them through those means?
Sir, I don't have the particular numbers of arrests and or the specific nature of the op plan that might have been around that in front of me.
Okay. I'd also like to know how many who are alleged to have committed crimes or alleged to have been witnesses to what happened on January 6th were people who had been arrested or had warrants served on them using pre-dawn raids and SWAT teams. Can you tell me at least an approximate number, or whether it's a comparable number to those who had those executed or arrested in connection with the spring and summer riots of 2020?
Sir, I don't have either of those in front of me, and I would just, as a little preamble, would explain that the mechanics going behind time of day and when an arrest and how an arrest is done is very specific to each individual case and what potential threat they may or may not pose. But I don't have numbers or comparisons with me at this time.
Okay. You have any way of telling me how many of these individuals who were arrested in connection with the spring and summer riots of 2020 were placed in solitary confinement?
I don't have that, and I'm not exactly sure that the FBI would house that data, but I definitely don't have that, and I'm not sure we would have that. We could probably figure out how to direct you to the right organization for that.
Mr. Olson, do you have any idea how many of these individuals were offered deferred resolution agreements? That is, the individuals arrested in connection with offenses during the spring and summer of 2020?
I do not, Senator, have that specific information. Some of those cases, of course, are still ongoing out of that time period, as are the January 6 cases. I don't have any information about how many cases have been resolved via plea offers or plea agreements versus going to trial.
Okay. I see my time's expired. I'm going to ask the two of you to answer these questions and others that I will submit as questions for the record. I understand that you've got big jobs to do, but I don't want 4.5 months to elapse again, and I certainly don't want a response that is non-responsive. Thank you.